Now, let's officially begin our lesson. Profound and subtle dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate sentient beings, please generate supreme bodhicitta before today's teaching. Next, we will continue our discussion of the 100 verses on wisdom. The 100 verses on wisdom. Today we will begin from the 68th verse. Distance yourself from harmful environments, toxic friends, bad spouses, and negative family members. And from evil kings and wicked people, it is certain that one will always obtain happiness. Here the main point is discussed. It is important that we distance ourselves from particularly negative environments, as these are environments that can obstruct your personal spiritual practice and negatively impact your human life. This refers to individuals who are especially negative, as well as people who are particularly harmful, such as certain friends, a detrimental spouse, or even damaging relatives. This can also extend to include a harmful ruler or other related negative people you may encounter in your life. If that's the case, then you will most definitely be able to live well. Indeed, as we can see in our own daily lives, if we look at it the other way around, if you rely on a good environment and good friends, when you have supportive family members, like a wonderful wife or a loving husband, and you also have dependable relatives, an encouraging leader, and other genuinely good people surrounding you, then your life will be filled with a great deal of happiness. If you don't have this, and if you frequently associate with these kinds of individuals, then in the end you will undoubtedly be very miserable. Each of these bad people truly brings immeasurable harm to society, to individuals, and to families. The damage they cause is incalculable. Why is it that in today's society there are so many swindlers with so many troublemakers? These individuals consistently create problems, whether it's a considerable threat to our public security, a serious disruption to the general social order, or causing immense trouble for countless individual families. The impact is also unimaginable. In fact, it is mainly caused by malicious individuals. On the surface, people may all look the same. But in reality, the immense harm brought by bad people is truly beyond imagination. We have a well-known saying in the Tibetan areas, a truly good friend is like a beneficial medicinal tree, while a bad friend is like a poisonous tree. So if there are two different trees and one is a medicinal tree, then everything around it brings great happiness. However, when it comes to a poisonous tree, every individual who is associated with it is bound to experience suffering. Furthermore, the harm that it brings can be incredibly difficult to recover from, even within the span of an entire lifetime. Just like in the treatise on the modes of a ruler, there is also a saying that goes, "The faults of wicked attendants also bring ridicule and slander upon the ruler." The deplorable and shocking actions of these wicked relatives, whether they are relatives, servants, or family members, the considerable harm and unfortunate misfortune they bring, even to a truly remarkable ruler, can ultimately cause all kinds of terrible disasters, immense difficulties, and profound suffering. It is for this very reason that our ancestors often said, "It is certainly better to be illiterate than to not know other people." We should always pay close attention to the individuals around us carefully. But when observing, sometimes it may already be too late for some people. In the past, we may have already relied on them, and after relying on them, we later discovered that they were in fact very wicked, and the total harm that they bring is truly immeasurable. But at that point, you might not be able to do anything about it. This kind of situation does happen. However, if you really haven't depended upon such untrustworthy people before, in your daily life, it is important to rely on people who are genuinely better than you. Always use your own wisdom to make your choices. Otherwise, it is certainly true that many people in this world, including even some of your friends, can unfortunately bring you all kinds of significant losses. There are some people, because you trust them a great deal, you tell them certain private things, and then in the end, you are the one who suffers deeply for it. Some people, you lend them your ID card, and in the end, they will ultimately betray you. Some people, you entrust them with some of your wealth for safekeeping, and in the end, they inevitably let you down, shattering the trust you had. This experience brings about all kinds of emotional distress, and if a bad person is the one who causes you this profound kind of harm, it is, generally speaking, a very difficult process to fully recover from it. As the common saying so aptly puts it, once you have been bitten by a snake, for the next 10 years you will be afraid of even a simple rope. This means that if you suffer a truly damaging experience just a single time, the resulting psychological harm and emotional pain it causes you can remain incredibly intense and distressing for a very long time afterward. If it's not a bad person, for example, a good teacher, good companions, a truly good superior, a genuinely good servant, or the like, the profound happiness they bring is certainly not just for themselves alone, but even for those connected to them. They also leave a very good and lasting impression. As the old saying goes, people often say, love the house and its crow. This proverb means that if you like someone's house, even the crow on the roof is worth loving. It's the same principle. If you love a teacher, then the teacher's companions, all those associated with the teacher, all seem very good. That's the impression people get. If your companions are not good or your teacher is not good, then even those around them, even the place itself, no one wants to go there. So it's generally understood that in our conventional human world, there is indeed a real difference between good and bad. However, from the highest perspective within Buddhism, everything is inseparable clarity and emptiness, equality, emptiness, and so on, which can be realized. But before you can actually reach that certain level, you should learn to recognize the clear difference between what is black and what is white. Similarly, there is a fundamental difference in the very nature of good and evil. These important differences are not just ideas, they are clearly present and observable in our reality. If you say, I'm not a bad person, it's not necessarily up to you to decide. If you say, I'm not a good person, that's not necessarily up to you either. In fact, whether it's our actions or even our thoughts and intentions, they can be discerned. For this reason, we should make a conscious effort to stay away from such bad people. The surprising thing is that these very same people still manage to find their own happiness for a very long time. A truly wise person, even when entirely alone, can still fulfill their own noble aspirations, just like the king of beasts, even alone, can trample the proud heads of elephants. For those who possess wisdom and skillful means, even if they are all alone, they can still realize their own wishes. And in doing so, you will also be able to benefit others. Because if you possess the wisdom, the skillfulness, and the ability, even if you appear to be a weak, solitary person, you can still overcome everything and face all difficulties. Just like in the natural world, the undisputed king of all beasts is the magnificent snow mountain lion. The powerful snow mountain lion is fully capable of trampling and subduing the arrogant herds of elephants. Even when confronting the leaders of the elephant herd, it has no problem with this at all. No matter what challenges it might encounter, even when your opponents are seemingly numerous and their collective power is quite fierce, in reality you have the full capability to completely overcome them. This same principle can also be used as a metaphor for life in the wider world. In Mipham Rinpoche's The Treatise on the Modes of a Ruler, it is also stated, isn't it? If a king possesses the power of wisdom, he can protect all his realms. Should a king possess the great strength that is born from wisdom, he will be able to protect his entire country and all of its lands. And even if he were to stand completely alone, he would still have the power to rule over the whole world. I remember it being said like this. In other words, even if you are alone, you can actually rule over everything. This is also the case in the world. It was the same in ancient times as well. If someone is remarkable, though they are just one person, the sheer extent of their power and the scope of their influence can extend far beyond what we might typically imagine. For instance, some of the truly great masters and most eminent monks throughout history have been known to truly, like His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, for instance. He was a great master who lived in this world for a total of 71 years, but throughout his lifetime, what he accomplished in one life, many people may not be able to compare, even over countless lifetimes. His entire work of spreading the Dharma and benefiting beings, all his actions, the benefits he brought, and all of this are truly beyond imagination. So, if a person truly possesses deep wisdom and effective, skillful means, then even that single person can successfully overcome all manner of challenges, proving to be as effective as an entire pack of cunning foxes. All sorts of external obstacles, whether from people or non-human beings, all of these various challenges can be successfully overcome by relying entirely on his own profound wisdom and personal power. Therefore, when some people genuinely possess this ability, they don't necessarily need to have a great many assistants. This includes some of us in the future. No matter where we go to spread the Dharma and benefit beings, you can certainly bring some people along, but for the ones that you do bring, may not necessarily be beneficial to you in the long run. You'll find that some people are extremely respectful and polite at first, but gradually their attitude changes and things take a different turn. In the end, everyone might go their separate ways. This kind of situation also happens. So, what this really means is relying on other people to accomplish a great number of different things is actually quite difficult. Accomplishing everything by relying on your own wisdom and ability is indeed the wisest course of action to take. It is exactly the same for us when we are in a Dharma center. If there is someone who is especially skillful and resourceful, a person who is truly and genuinely great, then by relying on their many different strengths and their considerable influence, in other words, many of our endeavors are certainly able to begin and end quite well. But if there isn't such a person, sometimes, even if there are a great many people, if everyone is incredibly selfish and lacks genuine wisdom, if everyone is sorely lacking in ability, then at such times, it's certainly true that accomplishing truly great things is never an easy task. Therefore, although many people may appear similar from an outside perspective, in reality there are always underlying differences between them. If, in a public gathering, someone is belittled by others, and everyone says this person is incompetent, then it is clear that he is a person of poor character. When explaining this, you can simply refer to the other party as this person. In the provided explanation, the other party involved is considered to be an inferior person. Or, as another way to put it, you can say, this person must be of a low moral character. That particular phrasing works perfectly well too. The essential meaning here is that when someone is publicly insulted or looked down upon in front of a large crowd of people, and the general consensus from everyone is that this person is without a doubt truly terrible, and what's more, this person is also a very bad individual, everyone shares this kind of view. So we don't need any other judgment. Just by relying on people's discussions and comments, we can also know that this is a person of low character. I also mentioned this during my lecture just the other day. In the ancient text, the 100 verses on wisdom, there are certain kinds of people like this described. What this essentially means is, for example, when everyone usually gathers together, there are certainly some people who are very highly regarded by everyone. People will all say this person is very, very good. But as for some people, everyone has a very low opinion of them. They all say, this person is no good, this person is no good. In our daily lives, it might be that we ourselves are unaware of this. I often think to myself and I wonder, could it be that many people truly have a low opinion of me? Although it may seem like I have the public reputation of being a Khenpo, in all actuality, when people mention me, they might start to think that this person is not particularly capable, that they have a rather bad temper, or that their overall character isn't good, and so on and so forth. And for this very reason, when we all gather together here, after spending some time together, everyone will naturally form their own opinion. I believe this is an incredibly important point. Many of us are completely unaware of this. We tend to think very highly of ourselves, but in the minds of other people, the situation is often quite different. They've already decided what kind of person you are, and you still don't even know it. You might still be feeling proud in front of others, but in reality, in their eyes, you've become like a corpse. Maybe even worse than a corpse in some respects. It's genuinely hard to say for certain. And perhaps as a result of this, we have come to think of ourselves as being very pitiful indeed. But others actually hold us in high regard. For example, in a family of 5 or 6 people, all the family members might say, our daughter is truly wonderful, or our child is really good. In Tibetan areas, we have this tradition that from a young age, even at 3 years old, we can read the faces of elders. Since childhood, we might say, this child should turn out very well. When they grow up, they will mainly stay at home and are generally expected to carry on the family tradition. For some children, however, from a very young age, it's quite clear that this particular path won't work for them. In the future, we just let them live however they want. This kind of thing happens from childhood onward. This situation also happens in schools and in academies as well. For this reason, it's crucial that each of us should learn to observe what is actually happening. Otherwise, some people might genuinely believe they have a really bad temper, when in fact, everyone respects them and revolves around them. Then you might think you must be a really good person. No matter how you speak, you always feel that everything about yourself is good. But in reality, others aren't actually afraid of you, nor do they really respect you. It's just that they have no choice. People like you can only be dealt with this way. There's simply no other way. This applies to many things we do too. You can see it in some of our group activities as well. For example, in each of your classes, or among the people living in the same building, some people always act as if in their world, it's only natural for others to serve them as a matter of course. It's as if some people are just born to serve others. What's truly important is that they do it with sincere and genuine kindness, and that's a huge difference. This is a common understanding that everyone talks about among themselves. For example, someone in our building is especially arrogant and he always throws things around carelessly. People say he has a terrible character. Everyone thinks so. But there's also someone in our building who is especially good, who serves everyone. What is our class like? Within our dedicated group of volunteers, this particular person has proven to be really great and is in fact truly outstanding. It is for this reason that everyone praises him unanimously. So, as has been mentioned by the group here, no matter if it's among many people, whether in front of him or behind his back, people give him all kinds of criticism. Everyone talks about it. Like I said the other day, when a rat crosses the street, everyone shouts to beat it. For example, when choosing someone, as soon as this name is mentioned, everyone says, yes, yes, this person is really good. I want him. I want him. But for some people, it's no, this person has a terrible temper. This person is really especially bad. Don't pick this person. Don't pick him. Whenever people bring it up, that's what they say. You see, the people around you have already completely formed their opinions about you. Back when we used to herd yaks, for example, if someone liked to slaughter yaks, they would first pick one out, saying, this yak is very fat, or this yak is very skinny. They could tell at a glance ahead of time. And so people too often think very highly of themselves. Each one of us has an ego. We all naturally tend to be like this. I am like this too, but perhaps for many people, whether it's people outside or inside, my reputation is like this among them. It's because of my actions, because of my words, because of my attitude. If my actions, speech and thoughts are all very negative, then others can't always just tolerate you forever. But if my actions, speech and thoughts are always focused on benefiting others and are truly kind, maybe I wouldn't feel as inferior as I imagine. I guess things would be at least possible. So I also hope that after teaching the 100 verses on wisdom, everyone will still like to observe themselves. But I always feel like no matter how much I talk, it's as if it was all for nothing. For some people, no matter how many times you say it, they still get upset when they're supposed to be upset, and lose their temper when they're supposed to lose their temper. Originally, after a teaching is finished, at the very least, it should have an effect on everyone for a year, but maybe it only works for some people. As for the rest, I don't have much confidence. No matter how much is said, even if it's the great perfection teachings, maybe it's not for people like us. Even if the precious Guru or Samantabhadra Buddha gave you a teaching, you would still lose your temper when you really want to, and whoever is supposed to, well, they will do so. If I'm supposed to be selfish, I'll still be selfish. So you see, sometimes I really don't have much confidence in myself either. To be honest, some of us just seem to stay fundamentally the same no matter what. So regardless of how much Dharma is taught, it just goes in one ear and right out the other. This is very much like pouring water on a solid rock. It makes no real impact. The nature of the rock can never be changed. So for some people, their attitude is still just like that. No matter if their actions make others feel bad, they just think, then so be it. It really doesn't matter to them. It's nothing special at all. In the treatise on the modes of being, this behavior is specifically called being shameless. So you know, sometimes among us as people, it is certainly true that if you are meant to be troubled, then you will be troubled. And if you are meant to suffer, then you will suffer. Ultimately, no matter what you do, it might not make any real difference in the end. But I still think that this principle is explained incredibly well. In fact, among other people, you don't even need to say anything yourself. Others have already made up their minds about you long ago. A person is already defined in the eyes of others. So I also hope that those who used to have a bad temper or a bad personality, through the 100 verses on wisdom, whether you can quietly change yourself or not. You need to observe yourself. If I stand in someone else's shoes, what would their opinion of me be? Some people, even though they have been our loyal supporters for a very long time, are still not exactly great when it comes to the way in which they conduct themselves. So, for some of us, I still have this particular feeling. When many of you go about doing certain things, maybe I'm also especially lacking myself, let's put it that way. But still, when it comes to dealing with people and situations, it's not enough To put it bluntly, you will still get jealous when it's the right time to be jealous, get angry when it's the appropriate time to be angry, and just act however you want. After all, so many teachings have already been given. Our heads are already flat. Maybe our ears are already buzzing. But it seems our mind stream are still very much the same as they were before. And this, in reality, is actually a bit sad. I also feel that sometimes after talking and talking, it's better to just get some rest, relying on such a fragile body, shouting myself hoarse every day. Maybe it doesn't bring any change at all to others' mind stream. If there's no change, then all the words spoken over so many years are the same. Some people have already shared countless key instructions and have talked about all kinds of exoteric and esoteric teachings, but their own minds truly remain unchanged. That's rather quite regrettable indeed. If you truly wish to accomplish your own personal benefit, always seek a great wise protector carefully. If you have already reached the vast great ocean, you don't even mention your own humble name anymore. If you really want to achieve your own benefit, you should always look for a powerful protector. This is very important. Nowadays, we call this networking, and in fact, this is still necessary according to the rules of the world. If you want to do something, but you don't have certain connections or resources, then it will be very difficult, just like in our worldly life. If you want to go to the ocean to seek treasures, you have to rely on a merchant leader. If there is no merchant leader, then there's nothing you can do. If we're driving but don't have a driver, it's also impossible. Even if you have a car, it won't help. So just like that, there's no need to mention your own name. In fact, if someone is genuinely capable, then it becomes natural for you to place your trust in them. Wasn't I talking about the vine and the tree the other day? The vine also climbs all the way up by relying on the tall tree. So this is also very important. I seem to remember that in the Sakya maxims, this is also mentioned, right? Even those who are weak and powerless can accomplish things if they rely on the strong. Just like a drop of water, though tiny, once it merges into the ocean, it never dries up. Although a drop of water is very small, if it merges into the ocean, it will never dry up. It's the same principle. Some people themselves don't have much ability, but by following the example of good people, gradually, maybe some of them will become capable. Maybe their own abilities aren't that great, but by relying on their patron, they themselves also gain influence. A lot of people in society nowadays rely on certain specific powers or other influences. Now, if you happen to follow a truly good person or follow someone influential, you yourself can rise up as well. But this also comes with risks. Because if you lack ability and wisdom yourself and rely completely on others, sometimes if you follow the wrong person, once they inevitably fall, you'll suffer as well. There's a certain danger in that. Next, let's talk about be aware of people who have a bad nature and the problems that come from being too close to them. It's like a blazing fire. Their fundamental nature is incredibly hard to change. This is very much like the point we talked about earlier. Some people have an especially bad nature, and in such cases, so it's important to remember that no matter when or where it is always, always best not to get too close to them. Don't be too intimate. Don't let the relationship get too close. Otherwise, even if it seems like this bad person is fine with you when your relationship is good, once the relationship turns sour, the bad person will definitely expose you. He won't care at all. He doesn't feel any shame, nor does he have any sense of karma or any other particular kind of personal self-restraint whatsoever. Because you see, a truly bad person at any given time or place, whenever his core interests are threatened in any way, he will prove to be completely unyielding and will never make concessions for you or anyone else. His reaction can be compared to a fiercely blazing flame. If you make the mistake of touching it, you are certain to get burned. No matter what, sooner or later, it will burn your hand. So, as a general rule of thumb, a wicked person's fundamental nature is incredibly difficult to change. There's nothing you can do. It's very difficult to let go of. In the past, this was also mentioned in the words of my perfect teacher, right? The great masters of the past, including when we talked about the 8 freedoms. At that time, Patrul Rinpoche also spoke about it. The ancient masters used to say, a disciple's knowledge can indeed be changed, but a base nature is truly hard to alter. We often say in daily life, rivers and mountains are easy to change, but one's nature is hard to alter. Indeed, this saying is also fundamentally correct. Whether it's listening to the Dharma or, as I just mentioned, listening to the Dharma or relying on a spiritual teacher, or even if you go to an especially extraordinary environment, For an individual whose fundamental nature is genuinely wicked, it is very difficult for their core character to truly change. It really is very hard to change. So when we are in the process of looking at a person, it is considered best to look at them in a comprehensive way. And we should also ask ourselves, can their current qualities be improved upon? Their level of wisdom can be improved. Their academic qualifications and other similar things can also be improved. But if you genuinely want to change a person's fundamental nature, truthfully, it's not that easy. This is because a person's fundamental nature is something that is considered to be fixed. As the great and wise masters of the past have often said, to give you a clear example, if you happen to get stained with some kind of dirt, it can be washed off. But if your fundamental nature is truly as black as a piece of charcoal, then it becomes incredibly difficult to change. If you become very close with such a person, a decision that can seem harmless initially, you might eventually end up facing all kinds of trouble yourself. The broader lessons of history have certainly shown this principle to be true, with the same pattern repeating many times over. Just now, we quoted the saying, "It is easier to change rivers and mountains than to change one's nature." Back in the Tang dynasty, there was a very intelligent person, but because his nature was very malicious, later on there was someone named Du Liang. When everyone else had completely abandoned him, Du Liang, however, did not. And yet, in the very end, he still tried to harm Du Liang. Afterwards, he himself eventually died far away from his home as a guest in a foreign land. In any case, throughout history, people with malicious natures, whether it's monastics or lay people or even leaders, it's a simple truth that some people genuinely possess a very bad nature. Now, when we talk about this kind of inherent nature, it's important to clarify that it's not that we label someone as a bad person or a good person. As I mentioned the other day, this isn't something for others to judge. One should learn to observe oneself. When I take a moment to observe myself, sometimes I get the feeling that my own nature, even though I don't have any intention to harm others, whether it's enemies I resent or people around me, I truly don't want to harm anyone. It seems that for a great many years I haven't wanted to harm anyone. But sometimes just saying so myself doesn't necessarily make it actually true in the minds of others. Even if I think I haven't harmed anyone, others might feel that because of my direct or indirect actions, if I really have caused harm, then in my mind I become a bad person. There's nothing more to say about that. If you harm sentient beings, then you are definitely a bad person. This particular kind of bad person is, someone who is exceptionally terrible. Maybe even studying Buddhism won't necessarily help. So nowadays, some large companies, when they conduct their interviews, they look not only at a person's knowledge, but also at their character. For example, they might deliberately throw some trash nearby to see if the person truly has an innate, natural tendency to do good deeds. Or perhaps they might observe them in other different ways, and so on and so forth. There are such practices. So I think each of us should take a look at ourselves. If your own character is truly very bad, have you prayed to the Guru and the Three Jewels, or have you changed at all through spiritual practice? If there is even a little change, try your best to correct yourself. Because in Buddhism, we are taught to avoid all evil and practice all good. In this way, we should try our best to correct these bad habits. But if your nature is truly bad, then what might happen? You might just think, well, if I break the precepts, so be it. If I kill, so be it. Anyway, I like it this way. There are people like this in the world as well. Even though drinking is not good, I just drink if I want to. If I end up in hell, so be it. Even though killing is not good, I just kill if I want to. If I end up in hell, so be it. This is such a simple mindset. It's simply using simple, convenient words in order to deceive oneself. Other than that, there is genuinely nothing more of substance, whether it's the cosmic law of karma or the established human rules and regulations. It appears there is a complete lack of self-control. In this day and age, many people around the world who commit illegal acts are, for all intents and purposes, behaving in a manner that is fundamentally no different from animals. Maybe in some aspects there's a slight difference, but other than that, there's none. So I think for us who study Buddhism, at the very least, we have encountered such wonderful Dharma. Let's see if we can change some of our previous bad habits, including various unwholesome states mentioned in Buddhism, such as arrogance, jealousy, malice, cunning, hatred, greed, and other similar afflictions. If we can change these, then we are truly practitioners. That's when practice really works. If we are bound by deep hatred, holding grudges and resentments against each other, even after being reborn into a new life, that deep enmity will still continue to follow us. If you harbor a profound hatred towards someone, it's like being tied together by the rope of hatred. In a situation like this, even within a single lifetime, it is already very difficult to completely resolve such profound issues between people. And this problem can persist even after many lifetimes, carrying on from one life to the next. As a result, it's possible the cycle of vengeance will never truly end, because this is a very deep-seated kind of hatred. There is just no conceivable way out of it. It keeps on following you. There's nothing you can do about it. This kind of situation does exist. Sometimes when we see certain people, with some people, we feel an inexplicable aversion toward them. Conversely, with others, we feel an almost immediate sense of closeness and genuine affection. This phenomenon indicates that since beginningless time, we have already established bonds of either deep affection or intense hatred with the people we encounter. These are the kinds of karmic connections we have. And perhaps these karmic ties will continue even in this lifetime, not just among people, but even in the form of disasters involving earth, water, fire, and wind. In the Buddhist scriptures, there is the Sutra of Ananda's Four Matters, which in essence further helps to explain that if we committed killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying in past lives, in this life we might even become earth, water, fire, or wind. Or perhaps even poisonous snakes emitting incredibly toxic gases and so on. Throughout the entire natural world, all kinds of disasters occur. To us, it seems, for instance, the adversity I might face today doesn't happen for no reason, or I might meet an enemy or meet a good person. But in reality, throughout our countless lifetimes, there is no such thing as a cause or condition without reason. Most of them are due to causes and conditions from this life, and some are from previous lives. It is precisely these causes and conditions that lead to such phenomena, which are extremely, extremely common. Therefore, no matter what kind of situation we are in during this life, it is always best not to form enmity or resentment with anyone. Otherwise, it may be difficult to resolve even over the course of many lifetimes. In the past, Master Yingwang once said, there was a person who, during his youth, was responsible for the deaths of 13 people in an effort to eliminate a troublesome group of bandits. Later on, it would seem that another individual was also with them, and he killed that person as well. As a result, that person was reborn as his son. Then when his son died, he was heartbroken and said, "Why did my son have to die? Why are you leaving me?" Then his son passed away, his eyes remaining wide open, and with his final words he shockingly declared, "I am not your son. You are the one who killed me in a past life." Perhaps he had killed him earlier in this life, or perhaps it's a connection that we have carried over from a previous life. There are times when even our very own biological children, or the various people who are simply around us, are just like the story of Venerable Gadayana that was told before. Perhaps an enemy from a past life becomes a loved one in this life, or perhaps even a loved one in this life becomes an enemy in the future. Things can truly change like this, so we hope to completely resolve as much as is humanly possible the grudges and resentments from before, and to sincerely repent. In the future, I would strongly advise you it's really for the best not to form such a deep and lasting enmity with absolutely anyone. This concept will be explained in more detail below using a metaphor. For example, animals such as snakes, mongooses, crows, owls, water buffalo, and horses. If enmity has already formed in a previous life, isn't it evident here as well? This is explained through a metaphor. For instance, consider the deep-seated animosity that exists between snakes and cats, or the rivalry between crows and owls, and also between water buffalo and horses. There is a kind of mutual hostility that exists between them, and the reason for this is because, in their past lives, they accumulated all sorts of grudges and resentments over the course of many lifetimes. Even in this life, they continue to harm and kill each other. This is something we should be able to observe as well. This is also mentioned in texts like the Sakya Maxims, where they talk about these kinds of relationships. For example, there is the well-known enmity between cats and mice, and the instinctual hatred between predatory hawks and sparrows, as well as the classic rivalry between crows and owls, or crows and the horned owls mentioned earlier. Many classic texts also discuss the dynamic between these two animals. For instance, crows can see during the day, so during the day they go into the owl's nest. They start eating them and destroying them, because owls can't see during the day. In the darkness of night, owls have the distinct advantage of sight, while crows are effectively blind. The owl then exploits this, entering the crow's nest to cause a great deal of trouble. And so, generation after generation, they continue like this. Some Buddhist scriptures also mention that in the past, owls and crows have always held grudges against each other. Once a certain crow made a peculiar request of its companions, asking them to pluck out all of its feathers. Then with a pitiful expression, it desperately begged the group of owls for their help. Seeing its sad state, the owls couldn't help but agree that it was indeed quite pitiful. It kept talking about the faults of the crows, things like that. Then they eventually became very good friends. After some time had passed, they considered it as one of their own group. Later, in that place, originally, owls lived in caves on the cliffs, and they were doing fine. But a little later, the crows began to use a large amount of fine grass from the trees, along with a good number of leaves. These materials were all gathered up, and then they worked together to build their nests. Also, there's some thunder happening over here. I wonder if you can hear that sound. In the very tragic end, all of the unsuspecting owls were completely and utterly burned to death by the fire. This story teaches a very important lesson. Where there are old, unresolved grudges from the past, it is never a wise decision for one to place their trust. This is exactly what happened with the crows, who cleverly pretended to be good and friendly, only to then turn around and burn all of the poor owls to death in a terrible act of betrayal. And so, as for the charred bodies of the owls that were left behind, there is a verse, but I can't quite recite it clearly from memory. The essential meaning being conveyed is that, as it is recorded in the Sutra of the Mixed Jewel Treasury, there is this story in the Sutra of the Mixed Jewel Treasury. Anyway, this is a kind of enmity carried over from life to life. There are also such things between animals. When we watch the television program Animal World, this is genuinely the case, including in the vast natural world of today. There are actually a great many different animals that naturally become enemies of one another. And actually, it's very much the same among people as well, isn't that right? This is something I often find myself thinking about. What were figures like Zelensky and Putin like in their past lives? They genuinely want to completely wipe each other out. But the truth is, no one really knows when it will all end. It has already been going on for more than 18 months, and there is still no end in sight. Therefore, if people have even minor conflicts, they should reflect on this and repent even more. Especially among Vajradharma friends, it's really the case. Vajradharma friends often spend time together. If you have conflicts, then it's impossible to even think about attaining accomplishment in Vajrayana practice. Every guru, when giving empowerment, will talk about these are the 5 vows and also the 14 root downfalls. If you can't even do this, in that case, then perhaps studying the profound Vajrayana teachings may not actually be of very much use for you. So actually, I don't think these things are very difficult. If I had to be together with my enemy, well, that might actually prove to be a bit difficult. For example, someone who killed my father or my mother, such a person living together with me in the same room, as an ordinary person, I would probably still feel something in my heart. But generally, among Vajradharma friends, there isn't really any hatred. So why is it that some of it might be innate? Like, I just can't stand this person. Anyway, whenever this person shows up, I feel uncomfortable. Among some of our Dharma friends in their views and words, no matter how nicely they put it, in reality, if they can't stand someone, they just can't stand them. If they truly have the ability, they will certainly try to harm that person, whether it's done openly or secretly behind their back. In any case, as we Tibetans often say, even if it's just a little louse, they'll throw it onto that person. If you can't do anything bigger to harm them, as long as you have a little louse on yourself, you slowly... Nowadays, it seems most people don't have lice anymore, so maybe this metaphor doesn't really resonate as much now. But that's the saying. Even if you can only harm them a tiny bit, whether it's saying something or doing something small, as long as it can hurt them even a little, I'm willing to do it. If someone is good to me, even if I have just a little ability, I want to help them. Actually, people like this, ordinary people, are still quite pitiable. Next, it says, relying on anger, even self-benefit cannot be achieved. The wise, before examining, should never give in to anger. If you are someone who easily loses their temper, is irritable, and has a lot of anger, not to mention benefiting others, even your own affairs won't succeed, because people with a lot of anger are disliked by everyone, and people definitely won't have a good impression of you. So, as a wise person, without careful consideration, sometimes maybe after very careful consideration, you might begin to feel that, at least on the surface this time, if this matter isn't handled in a slightly more strict manner. Or if I do not show even a bit of anger, at that point there is really nothing else that I can do, except for some of those very special circumstances like that. And generally speaking, you should not let a trivial matter make you fly into a rage and immediately give rise to anger. That kind of reaction is really unreasonable. Indeed, when it comes to a person's faults, anger and hatred are significant. Individuals who are quick to anger, or who are generally known to have a bad temper, this should be considered the greatest fault among a person's shortcomings. Those who are easily angered, they themselves are not happy, and neither are the people around them. As I just mentioned, people with bad tempers, among both men and women, there are some who have made a commitment. Maybe you don't realize it yourself, but everyone else says so. Among the women, they say, that certain man has a really bad temper and everyone is afraid of him. As for certain women, others say, don't mention this to her, otherwise she'll get angry. Do both the men and women know these people so well? They all say to each other, you can't say this to that person. That person has a really bad temper. I don't know why. Nowadays, men and women generally don't communicate much anyway, but news still spreads very quickly. They are always passing information back and forth. This kind of thing is really not good at all. In the past, in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there was Zhang Fei. At that time, he was also known for having a really bad temper. Later on, it's said that others got him drunk intentionally and then killed him. Maybe that's how it really was, as that's how I recall it from back then. Now, within my collection of Tibetan books, I found that I also have Water Margin, and I recently took the opportunity to take a quick look at it. I read that a very long time ago, and back then I was genuinely very curious about the whole thing. But now it seems to me there's really nothing inside that is particularly worth reading. And having such a bad temper like that, well, that really isn't a good thing for anyone. Who was it that said this before? I believe it was the philosopher Lao Tzu, right? He said, when authority is lacking, there is much anger. And what this means is, people with a bad temper lack their own authority and virtue. That's why they often feel anger and hatred. It's not because they are actually powerful themselves. It's really not like that. The anger often comes from within, whether it's from their own weakness, their own sense of inferiority, or a feeling of being wronged. Generally, when a person's authority is lacking, there is a great deal of anger. Because they lack the necessary authority and internal virtue, they often feel anger and hatred. Very few things can actually be solved by anger and hatred, so we should make every possible effort not to generate feelings of anger and hatred. Of course, it's easy to say we shouldn't get angry, but whether we can really do it is very difficult. In the past, the Mahaprajaparamita Shastra also made mention of among all afflictions, anger is the heaviest. Of all the afflictions, the karmic consequences of anger are the most severe. Among all unwholesome retributions, the retribution for anger is the greatest. This should be from the Mahaprajaparamita Shastra. This scriptural evidence is very good. Everyone should remember it. Let me recite it again. Among all afflictions, anger is the heaviest. Among all afflictions, such as greed, jealousy, arrogance, fundamental afflictions, and latent afflictions, among all these, anger is the most serious. And then among all unwholesome retributions, among all unwholesome karmic results, the retribution for anger is the heaviest. In this case, I think, no matter whether we have studied the Bodhikaryavattara, the Madhyamakavatara, or any other treatise, anger undoubtedly is the primary culprit. If an individual's mind stream of consciousness very rarely gets angry or loses their temper, then everyone feels that this person is actually quite good. At the very least, they have a good temper, even if they lack ability. But it's rare for someone to possess all qualities completely. If an individual has a truly good character and does not easily lose their temper, is capable in their work, and is also considered to be wise, and also has virtue, if they possess all these qualities, and are also good-looking, it is truly very difficult for a single person to have everything in every single aspect. So if you find someone who is genuinely capable and also able to get along very well with the people around them and lives in harmony with people, such a person, if a person has everything else going for them, but has a strong tendency toward anger, everyone will be especially afraid of them. Everything else might be fine. Your wisdom is good, your knowledge is profound, you're fine in every aspect. But the one thing is, in Patrul Rinpoche's Words of My Perfect Teacher, it's mentioned that there was a bhikshu who was very good in every way, except he had a strong tendency toward anger. Patrul Rinpoche said, among all unwholesome actions, anger is the most serious. If a bhikshu has a strong tendency toward anger, then there's nothing good left about him. That's roughly the meaning. So if we are people with especially bad tempers, then no matter how good our other qualities are, it's hard to say what's really good about us. The water of patience by its nature can extinguish the fire of anger. With the skillful methods of harmonious transformation, how could enemies still harbor anger? If the water of patience, if we cultivate the water of patience ourselves, it's best if it can extinguish the fire of anger. Of course, sometimes the fire of anger can burn up all the water of patience. That can happen too, the reverse situation. Originally, if the water of patience is abundant, it can extinguish the fire of anger. But if there's only a little patience and the fire of anger is especially strong, then it might burn absolutely everything up completely. And that can happen. So if you possess excellent methods of self-restraint, in that case it is said that even a great multitude of enemies will be completely unable to cause you any kind of harm. As a clear example of this, in the Maharatna Kutta Sutra, there is a specific account of a Brahmin who was named Polada Brahmin. This particular individual, a man by the name of Polada, found that for a multitude of different reasons he was beginning to develop and hold on to a deep-seated anger that was directed squarely toward the enlightened figure of the Buddha. It seems he had 500 different ways of experiencing the emotion of anger. At that very moment in time, all of the humans and all of the gods, to be honest, I found it extremely hard to accept at first. Clearly the Buddha had the ability, so why didn't he just go ahead and subdue him? But the Buddha himself never did so. A little while later, the people who were standing around him, and so approximately 4,000 people altogether, gave rise to the enlightened mind of bodhicitta. They felt that the Buddha's patience was especially powerful. Subsequently, that very same individual, the Polada Brahmin mentioned earlier, was also deeply and profoundly moved by the Buddha's remarkable patience. In the end, he finally let go of all his destructive negative habits, sincerely took refuge in the compassionate teachings of the Buddha, and was profoundly transformed by him as well. Of course, the Buddha's extraordinary patience in this matter, as we ordinary worldly people would say, is truly beyond words. But the patience of bodhisattvas is also truly remarkable. For us ordinary people, as long as you have food and clothing, or when nothing is happening, your patience is still pretty good. But as soon as something actually happens, even just a little bit, in the past we have certainly met some Buddhists who would say, I practice really well, really, really well. But then later they'd say, my husband cheated on me, I want to kill him. They would become extremely distressed and agitated, to the point of saying very intense things like, I want to kill him, and so on. So it's important to understand that this is the same for Buddhists. When nothing happens, maybe our patience is still quite good. But it's best to use the water of patience to extinguish the fire of our anger. In this way, both ourselves and others will find happiness. Next, let's talk about if one does not diligently cultivate good causes for the eternal supreme Dharma position, then whether one has seen or not seen perfection, it will waver like a water bubble. The unchanging eternal Dharma refers to our liberation. The state of liberation is fundamentally irreversible. This liberation, in fact, requires that we consistently rely on our own diligence in the practice. If you are not diligent in cultivating virtuous actions, this includes all of those virtuous actions that are connected with the aspects of liberation and merit. And yet, if you lack diligence, then the perfect merits we are presently able to witness, as well as those other perfect merits we have not yet been able to see, will all become completely unattainable for us. Some of them may even waver and vanish, just like bubbles in water. As for bubbles, in a very short time, they are easily blown apart by the force of the wind and then disappear from view. For this reason, as practitioners, we must be sure to frequently and diligently cultivate virtuous actions. This cultivation of virtue must not be relaxed, nor can we afford to be constantly negligent. Otherwise, indeed, the positive states we currently have, these good states of mind and firm understandings, which are achieved through great effort and perseverance, and the confidence we possess, just as it is so eloquently described in the Bodhicariyavatara, are ultimately as fleeting as a brilliant flash of lightning that momentarily illuminates the profound darkness of night. disappearing in an instant. Whenever we experience even a brief moment of a virtuous intention, it is important that we make an effort to nurture it well within ourselves. As Patrul Rinpoche wisely said, we must continually work to knead our virtuous mind, just like kneading a piece of leather, so that gradually it becomes more malleable and workable. Otherwise, even just a single moment of virtuous intention will very quickly vanish and disappear in a short period of time. It is for this very reason that such virtuous intentions that we have are definitely not easy to come by. Relying on the blessings of the Guru and the three jewels. Truly, if you look at some people in big cities, and to all of the wonderful Dharma friends who are joining us here at the Institute today, each person has many remarkable stories. It's especially not easy. For some people, even coming here once is truly not easy. For those who live here, they also all too frequently face considerable family difficulties and a wide variety of personal health issues, as well as all kinds of visible and invisible obstacles. Some struggle with poor health, others with their mindset. For some, it's issues with family members. For others, it is all kinds of unfavorable and adverse conditions. In this day and age, even possessing a little bit of virtuous roots and merit is proving to be exceptionally challenging. We absolutely should not let these be taken away by the enemy of anger. That would be a real pity. If your own bank card at home were taken away by someone else, we would feel that is unfortunate. In the same way, our virtuous roots and merit, which we have managed to accumulate just a little of, if it is taken away by anger or destroyed by other causes that ruin our virtuous roots, that is also truly pitiful. Another thing is, if we don't keep making efforts, the fruit of eternal liberation is actually waiting ahead of each and every one of us. But if we ourselves don't make the effort, just as mentioned earlier, it's simply impossible. It is absolutely impossible to fully achieve that goal. Therefore, we ourselves should also practice with great diligence. Right now, many people should still be able to do so while at the Institute. However, the time that was actually spent at the Institute, maybe I'm being a pessimist, but it might not be very long. From various causes and conditions, both inside and out, when I observe them, for each of you, don't think that you will be able to stay at the Institute forever, that your house is very solid, that your health is good, and that you are not like those people who suffer from all kinds of terminal illnesses. Maybe your body is healthy for now, but it's hard to say if you'll always be healthy. Maybe your house is sturdy right now. Maybe you don't have any other kinds of obstacles at the moment. But it is still difficult to say. After all, everything is ultimately impermanent. So now that we have been given such a precious opportunity and this special connection, everyone should also, first and foremost, you should always try not to form negative relationships with many of your fellow practitioners. If you not only fail to do good deeds here, but instead form negative ties with many people, then that's really not worth it at all. It would certainly be a much better idea to just stay right here in the city, not seeing through the affairs of this life. You could, in fact, just as well continue to hold your grudges against them while you are there. Secondly, you should do your very best to practice virtuous deeds. This is not easy at all, because even if we study very well and keep the three sets of precepts very purely and cultivate renunciation and bodhicitta, as well as the non-dual view of equality and vajrayana, even if we contemplate these well, it's still quite difficult. But we should still act according to our own abilities. Some people may indeed find that what we talk about in this, the 100 verses on wisdom, I believe there are a very small number of people whose character may have truly changed. In the past, when we were in front of His Holiness, when listening to the Sutra of 100 Karmas, in terms of karma and its effects, there was a significant change. I listened to the words of my perfect teacher with Khenpo Sodargye. At the end of 1984 and in 1985, when I was listening to the words of my perfect teacher, it truly was very helpful for my life. Including the Dharma I listened to in front of other teachers. It seems that throughout my life, I felt there probably wouldn't be any major changes. But sometimes it seems that much of the Dharma I heard was also rather vague to me. This time it appears to be a kind of worldly wisdom, but it still has a certain connection to our practice and these teachings. There is still a certain connection. So for the sake of the ultimate attainment of liberation, we still need to continuously accumulate virtuous merit and keep working diligently and persistently. If you feel especially tired, take a short rest, then keep striving again. If you are together with many like-minded Dharma friends, then actually this is just as it is described in the Dzakha Mountain Dharma. This is a very fortunate thing. When we Dharma friends practice virtuous deeds, We all serve as a source of mutual inspiration and humility for each other. This is extremely important. Now, for today's final verse, the secret words you hold in your heart should never be revealed to wicked or untrustworthy people. This is because, much like a venomous snake when it is angered, they will use that information to harm you. In other words, no matter what kind of secret it is, any confidential matter you keep in your heart must be guarded carefully. Regardless of the person, especially if they are wicked people, as mentioned here, you must never share these secrets with such people. As we have previously discussed, wicked people possess natures that are inherently malicious, meaning they are fundamentally lacking the ability to restrain their actions with virtue. In contrast, some truly virtuous people at any given time will never say what shouldn't be said, nor will they do what shouldn't be done. Even if thousands or tens of thousands of people are doing bad things, they absolutely still will not do it, and they certainly will not say it. However, if we are talking about a genuinely wicked person, it is a fact that even if you go out of your way to make the conscious choice to speak to them in an incredibly sweet and gentle manner on this particular day, after some time passes, once something particular actually happens, they will absolutely harm you. And this is precisely how it is, you see. It's really just like a particularly venomous snake in the world. When a venomous snake is in great danger, even if you were to carefully raise it up and then hold it securely in your arms, as soon as it starts to feel even a little bit unhappy, if you touch it or do something like that, it will immediately release its venom and will most certainly harm you. This is its natural instinct. So you can't say, you venomous snake, I was so good to you before. Why are you treating me like this now? There's nothing to say about that. A venomous snake is simply a venomous snake. If it weren't like this, it wouldn't be called a venomous snake. So when it comes to certain secrets or confidential matters, they really must not be shared. In the treatise on the modes of a ruler, it says not to share them with anyone at all. Here it specifically says not to share them with evil people. Do you remember how it's stated in the treatise on the modes of a ruler? One should keep confidential words extremely secret and never reveal them to anyone. These words that require special confidentiality absolutely must not be disclosed to anyone, no matter what. Not even to your very best friend, your close confidant, or your most dearest companion. This is true whether it's your Dharma friends or even your own parents. You must not tell anyone. Not even your teacher should be told. When we are talking about not revealing any personal secrets, it's acceptable not to tell even your teacher. A close friend will pass it on to another close friend, and eventually it spreads worldwide. In the treatise on the modes of a ruler, this is something we've explained to everyone before as well. Because if you tell your close friend, saying, don't tell anyone else that that's how it starts, then they go and tell someone else, saying, yo, this must be kept secret, you can't tell anyone. For some things to be kept confidential, even including Khenpos and Khenmos, I've heard that some are not very good at this. For example, when we hold an empowerment ceremony, all the Khenpos and Khenmos are supposed to keep it confidential. But some, perhaps for their own benefit, will tell people close to them in advance, explaining everything to them ahead of time. Actually, engaging in this type of behavior really affects your personal character. And to be quite honest, it does diminish your integrity to some extent. There are some things that we really need to keep confidential. If something needs to be kept secret, then you shouldn't tell anyone. Even if you do tell, it doesn't serve any purpose. Although you might feel sorry for someone, everyone has people like that in their lives. You feel compassion for those close to you, but actually everyone has this kind of situation. If because of this reason it ends up causing all sorts of obstacles and negative consequences, then all the blame falls on you. So this is actually very, very serious. And looking back in the past, there were quite a lot of people who were not particularly good at keeping secrets. We could also observe this ourselves. If something is not to be told to anyone, no matter how good or bad the person is, sometimes they get angry and tell other people, or they will tell their own close friends themselves. This really shows that the person is actually a bad person. We don't need to say anything more, but these things, these are what Mipham Rinpoche and Nagarjuna Bodhisattva have said. It's not just me saying this here. If you leak a secret, if that's the case, then this is really a very bad thing indeed. So personally, I am very careful when it comes to leaking secrets, precisely because of this. In the beginning of my A Journey to the West, I kept it secret for 3 years. For 3 years, even from my closest Vajra friends, this was kept secret in front of my guru. This is a confidential entrustment in Buddhism, and it cannot be disclosed. It cannot be leaked, and it cannot be told to anyone. On this point in the past, His Holiness seemed to think that I didn't really have much wisdom or ability. but maybe I was very careful when it came to not leaking secrets. So there was one time when His Holiness, I think I mentioned this somewhere as well, in travels in India, I also mentioned it. His Holiness said, we don't really have anything that can't be told to others. But not leaking secrets is a very important quality for a person to have. You simply don't go around telling other people about the important work that we do. This particular quality, for me on a personal level, is also one of the primary reasons that the Guru decided to accept me. So you must understand that at any time. This can be seen very clearly. For instance, some people truly tell everything to others, and at the end of the treatise on the modes of a ruler, it says, especially when it comes to secret matters, no one should talk about them at all. Especially you shouldn't tell women. Once you tell a woman certain things, in the end, it is highly likely that you'll end up completely ruined and utterly disgraced. This is because some women, although on the surface they might appear to be very kind and gentle, because in the very end, they simply just can't keep it in. They absolutely cannot be trusted to keep your secrets. Women are naturally especially fond of saying things like, let me tell you something, but you absolutely can't tell anyone else about this. You must never tell anyone. Among us Tibetans, there's a saying, a woman who says she won't tell tells another woman who says she won't tell. That woman then tells someone else who also claims she won't tell. In the end, what's supposed to be a secret spreads worldwide. There is this well-known kind of saying. So as things get passed around and around, in the end, a great many matters, including things that sometimes we really shouldn't talk about, end up not being kept secret for this very reason. And in the end, this causes a lot of loss. This is true whether it's for oneself or for others. Because when you share a secret with someone else, when you tell your secrets to these people, when you tell secrets to women, in the end, both you and others suffer great harm or loss as a result. This is a point that should be readily apparent to everyone. So, looking ahead to the future, it is particularly important for those who are studying Vajrayana Buddhism. You should protect your tantric practices. In fact, the signs of accomplishment, including the valuable experiences and profound realizations that you gain, can come about very quickly indeed. So I also sincerely hope that in the future, whatever you receive, whether it's tantric empowerments or guidance, you will be sure to keep it confidential and protect it very well. If you have leaked secrets in the past, you should sincerely repent. In this way, this may also be a kind of, whether it's between teacher and disciple or among Vajra brothers and sisters, this is what is known as a secret connection. And with this underlying principle, your own practice will succeed in the future. This is something I have learned from my own personal experience. All right, that's stop here for this lesson.
Sonandai Tamsa Thobaya Tonani Jana Pasi Kirgana Jirano Chupan Chupun Solen Raja
Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye